You have seen the wall, a row of gray logos under a headline, Forbes, Yahoo, Business Insider, Associated Press, with 3 words above them, as seen on. It is meant to read as proof. A serious institution looked at this person, vetted them, and put them on the record. But a large share of those badges were never earned. They were bought, sometimes for the price of a nice dinner. So we audited the press badge, how the fake ones are manufactured, what they actually cost, and the single test that exposes almost all of them. Start with the distinction the whole thing turns on, because the marketing deliberately blurs it. There are 2 completely different ways a brand name ends up next to a major outlet. The first is earned editorial coverage. A journalist, working for the publication, decided independently that you were worth writing about, and the publication's name is on the line for what they said. The second is paid placement. You, or an agency working for you, handed money to a service, and a logo appeared. Both produce the same gray badge on the same sales page. Both let someone say the words as seen on. But only one of them is what those words imply, that an independent newsroom vetted the claim. The entire gray market exists in the gap between what the badge says and what the badge proves. And once you see how cheap the second path is, you stop reading the wall of logos as evidence of anything at all. Here is the most common manufacturing line, and it is almost invisible to a casual viewer. It is the paid press release. You write your own announcement, you pay a distribution service, and that service syndicates your text across a network of finance and news sites. Yahoo Finance, Benzinga, MarketWatch, NASDAQ, sometimes Associated Press News. The cheapest plans start around $265. For that, your self-written copy lands on a few hundred sites, and the service explicitly tells you that you now have the right to say featured on those outlets. Read that again. You wrote the article. You paid to place it. And the badge it earns you is word for word identical to the badge a real reporter would have given you. This is not illegal, and the distributors are upfront that it is syndication, not earned coverage. But the buyer almost never passes that distinction on to you. They just hang the logo. Now the prestige badge, the one everyone wants featured in Forbes. There are several doors, and the price tells you which one was used. The front door is earned editorial, which costs nothing in placement fees, though hiring a public relations agency to chase it runs roughly $3,000 to $10,000 a month with no guarantee. Then there is a paid side door called Forbes Councils, a membership you buy, which lets you publish your own bylined articles labeled Council Post. That runs about $3,000 to $5,600 in the first year. There is also sponsored content, clearly stamped brand voice and paid program, which starts in the tens of thousands and climbs into the hundreds of thousands. And finally, the gray market basement, paying a contributor directly under the table to slip your name into their article, roughly $1,000 to $10,000. That last one violates Forbes' own rules, and when caught, the article gets pulled and the writer can be removed. 4 doors. 1 badge. The reader sees none of the price tags. There is one phrase in the pitch that should end the conversation for you, and it is the word guaranteed. The agencies running this market advertise it plainly. Guaranteed features in Forbes, Business Insider, and 20-plus major outlets, within 30 days for somewhere between $2,000 and $15,000. Sit with why that guarantee is structurally impossible if the coverage were real. A genuine journalist decides, independently, whether your story is worth running. No outside party can promise that decision in advance. So a guarantee can only mean one of 2 things. Either the vendor has quietly bought the placement, which means it is not editorial coverage at all, or the vendor is promising an outcome they have no power to deliver and is lying to close the sale. There is no third option where guaranteed and earned are both true. The moment a media offer carries a guarantee and a fixed price, you are no longer looking at journalism. You are looking at advertising wearing a press badge. So how do you check a wall of badges in under a minute? There is a single test, and it filters out the overwhelming majority of fakes. Click the badge. A legitimate earned placement links to live, working coverage, a real article, on the outlet's real domain, with a named writer you can look up and a publication date you can read. A manufactured badge does one of 3 things instead. It links to nothing. It is just a logo image, decorative, going nowhere. It links to a screenshot or a downloaded image rather than the live page, because the live page may have been pulled or never carried real editorial weight. Or it links to a page that is plainly a press release or a council post carrying a small label like sponsored, paid program, or contributor. So your checklist is short. Does it click through? Does it land on the outlet's own domain? Is there a real journalist's name on it? And is it stamped as sponsored or contributed? Run those four, and a wall of gray logos collapses into the handful that are actually real. Now, the part most badge buyers never think about: the law has an opinion. The Federal Trade Commission's endorsement guides say that any material connection between an endorser and a business must be disclosed clearly and conspicuously. A press badge is, in effect, an endorsement. It tells a buyer that a respected third party stands behind this person. If money changed hands to produce that impression, and the badge is presented as if it were independent editorial, you are in deceptive practice territory under Section 5 of the Act. And the liability does not stop at the brand. The guides state that advertising agencies and public relations firms can be held responsible for their roles in spreading endorsements they knew, or should have known, were deceptive. Enforcement actions can force defendants to return money to harmed consumers. So the cheap badge that looked like free credibility carries a tail risk most buyers never priced in. And it is one more reason that people with real coverage tend to link straight to it, while the people without it tend to hope you never click. So, what does a wall of as seen on logos actually prove? On its own, almost nothing. It proves someone had a few $100s and a press release service, or a few thousand and a council membership, or a contributor willing to take cash. It does not, by itself, prove that a single independent journalist ever judged the claim worth telling you. That doesn't make every badge fake. Plenty of people earn real coverage and display it proudly. It means the badge is not the evidence, the link behind it is. So invert the instinct. Don't be impressed by the logos. Be impressed by what happens when you click them. Real coverage clicks through to a living article on the outlet's domain, signed by a person with no paid stamp on it. Everything else is decoration priced to look like proof. Judge the brand by the one badge that survives the click, and ignore the rest of the wall. That's the red.